You know, I had a project that we were looking at a camera system for. It was a video game called Need for Speed, and it was going to be a big visual live action footage that was going to end up being processed through a visual effects house. So we needed the highest quality material we could get, and I needed the full-size chip, this full-size sensor, so I could get the depth of field reduced to 35mm style depth of field. So at that point, there's really only a few choices, and the red was a dead obvious one. So when we chose the red from a production standpoint, knowing that would work, and we offered 4K resolution to the visual effects house, it was like a done deal. Everybody was like, yeah, I got to do that. I'm going to talk about and show you some footage from a video game called Need for Speed. What Electronic Arts, who made the game, had decided what they wanted to do was install a narrative feature film inside the game. So every time you get to a new level, you get a little bit of narrative filmmaking that's information. You've seen it, right? I mean, me, I'm like, I've only seen the first scene. Because, you know, I can't get to level 1 1/4. But, you know, my nephews are like, cool, dude, great movie. It's like, whatever. It was really a really fascinating project because we started, it started with a phone call from a very old friend of mine, a producer named Eric Mofford, who called me up and he said, hey, Jeff, I think I'm going to produce this video game. You want to shoot it? I'm like, no. No, really? No. So here's my vision of like shoot a video game. It's like 3 guys with a DVX 100, right? So, but he kept calling. He's like, no, I think we're going to do it. It's probably going to be HD. So now I'm thinking, right, it's 8 guys and an HVX 200. But eventually what it turned into was a giant crew, 3 reds, a couple $1 million, Maggie Q, you know, it was like a 6-day commercial shoot almost. And we shot 55 scenes that made up about a 25-minute feature film that then got chopped up into the game. So every time you kick to a new level, you beat this guy in a race or you beat that, you learn a little bit more about who you are and what you're doing and what's happening around you, and you start to get the story coming out, which is, I think it was really cool. The other thing that happened with EA was they decided that for this time, instead of doing what had always been done in video games, which is they slam together a game and then it looks like what it looks like, generally flat and kind of ugly. And then they put some live action footage in by sending a crew out to shoot footage that looks like the game, which looks crappy to begin with, so the footage looks crappy and the whole thing looks terrible. What EA said to us was, this time, what they want to do is, we, the film production company, shoot the narrative elements and shoot them the way we think the game should look. And then they'll actually match the game to those elements. And to me, that was like the coolest thing in the world. So now I'm starting to get more information. I'm getting kind of excited about this job. So Joseph Hodges directed, and Joseph was the production designer on 24 for like 6 years or something. He's a really brilliant production designer, and it was his first big directing project, which was cool. So he got to do both sides of it. So we started designing based on some material that they gave us. So EA provided us, you know, some, like, I'll show you these later too, and there's some, you can look at these, like some car footage and some sunset footage and this. They make it kind of look like this, because what they were finding was they could finally now get a little contrastier. You know, the CG, because all the cars are going to be CG, could actually get contrastier and cleaner and a little more real looking. So they were taking the visual effects material information that came from the film industry and applying it to the gaming industry, and all of a sudden they're finding that their game can look like a movie. So they came to us to do this, and the initial idea was that we would shoot it flat, and they would put in highlights, and they would put in cool stuff and great effects, and we were like, that's not going to happen. So we just decided to shoot it the way we wanted to shoot it, and so we shot it like this, basically. You know, we shot it the way we thought the game should look, and then knowing that it was going to get processed a little bit. We thought a lot. When they finally got down and saw what we were doing, it turned out to be a tiny little bit. And the company, Anamorphic visual effects company up in Vancouver, I thought did an incredible job, creating footage that looked like a game, but also maintaining the integrity of the original work that we did at the same time. So I was really pleased with it. So that's like the snapshot of it. It came out in November, did okay. Wasn't the biggest selling game ever, but it was really, you know, in a lot of ways it was cutting edge to create this much narrative. You know, as far as we know, it's the most narrative that's ever been put into a game, and it's certainly the first time that the actual filmmaking company sort of decided what the game was going to look like. So that was all pretty cool. The cool part of this was the workflow, the post workflow on it, which was really interesting because, you know, they'd always done these, EA had always done these just with a 720 delivery, and it was like no big deal. And this time, you know, the whole thing about the red got really interesting. They, all of my prep has to, I think all prep starts with deliverables, right? You figure out what you're going to do, what you're going to deliver, then you just back up and figure out how you're going to get that. So we started looking at the workflow. What we had to deliver was, you know, a game for an Xbox, and what they needed to do that was, you know, the element was a 720p, 30-frame piece of material, and how are we going to get that? Because it had to be visual effects processed, and where are we going to get it from? So, you know, what we started with was need shallow depth of field and good quality. What we ended up with, for me, of course, was delivering something that could end up being 720p. So, you know, originally this was just a regular old high-definition video job. And we tested the camera. It looked great. We sent up a test to them. They could figure out how it was going to work. And really, it's all film technology. That's the most beautiful thing about the Red. It's all just DPX files. It's the same crap we've been using in visual effects forever. So once that got bought in, the whole thing was just a really done deal. We got 3 cameras. We got this giant shoot together. It went from 3 guys with the DVX100 to, you know, what had to be millions of dollars over 6 days with Maggie Q. Y'all remember Maggie Q, right? From, well, famous for Mission Impossible 3, but really styled it up on Balls of Fury, you know, the ping pong movie. And, you know, $1 million worth of cars, and it was really, if you walked on that set, it would have looked like, you know, any gigantic feature film. And we were able to shoot this material and deliver it in a way that worked perfectly for everybody. So from a director's standpoint, he got shallow depth of field, great resolution, really, you know, good-looking camera. From a DP standpoint, it's super easy because, you know, it's my first Red job, but it's, you know, the thing shoots raw. There's like no choices. You know, all you do on the, whatever you see on the monitor doesn't make any difference because the chip's the chip. It's just like shooting a piece of film. So me, I didn't care. I just tested, and I have my actually original tests here I can show you today. So for me, it was great because it was raw, which means I didn't need somebody to screw around with it and muck up the image as a digital imaging technician. I just needed a tech who could manage the data. So from my end, it was perfect. From a post end, we just worked it out. What we ended up doing with them, from a post-production standpoint, I thought was really smart. What Anamorphic, the visual effects company, needed was the DPX files in the cleanest form we could get to them. What I needed to deliver to hold my integrity was something color corrected. That green stuff is in the projector, actually. It's not in the stuff. It's in the monitor. What I needed to do was deliver something that looked like what we wanted it to look like. So the workflow we came to was we would do a director's cut. The director cut this piece, 25 minutes long, off of the quick ProRes that got imported after the shoots every day. They cut that. Then what Plaster City did was they output a ProRes of the movie with a lookup that made it look as close to raw as possible. And then they deconstructed the edit, and they basically put all the shots down without the dissolves and the transitions and all that. So they basically made an A-roll. And they did that in 4K, in DPX files, also looking like the raw. Then I went and I color corrected this, and we sent the color corrected guide, the 720 color corrected guide, to the visual effects house. And they took the DPX files and made a 4K DPX version of this, which they then were able to process. So they took the highest possible quality and held it all the way through post-production, right until they were done. Then they squirted it down to 720, and they made the game. The cool thing was, as this was going on, the gamers were making the city and the cars and all that other CGI stuff look like this photography. Because I think I started on this earlier. You know, originally they said, just shoot it flat, just shoot it, you know, we'll put in all the highlights, we'll put in all the stuff, we'll actually make it look like good photography. And we were like, that'll never happen on our set. So we just went in and we shot this. You know, we shot it dark and deep and rich and really never gave them anything that they couldn't use. And so when they were on set seeing this stuff, they're like, we're not going to have to hardly do anything to that. And that's really what happened. So they were able to truly maintain the integrity of the photography and still process it up and make it look kind of cool and make it look like the game. So when you see the game cut in and out, of course, like I said, I'll never see it, but you'll see it here. Oh, that's a cool effect. When you see the game, it really blends, I thought, really nicely. I thought everybody did a really stand-up job, both on the visual effects, the game creation, the photography, all kind of to make it work in, you know, one big pot.